Hey there, everybody. It's Mike Yao with Savage Kingdoms role-playing game and Fire in the Head Productions, the little production company of said game. So, anyway, I haven't done a video in a while, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. I've been really busy with some theatrical stuff that I've been directing and also performing in. I did a big music video that I was in, which is really cool. So I've been busy with like my acting stuff and less so with game design. I still run some professional game mastering stuff for kids and summer camps and that kind of stuff. So I'm still doing all that. The Savage Kingdom stuff is, I'm still doing that as well, but it's been kind of tertiary, honestly. Except for the Savage East, the new book that's out, trying to market it and get it out to the Indiegogo supporters. So if you are an Indiegogo supporter of the Savage East fundraising project, I've said it in a video a couple weeks ago. I probably need to do an update one just to let everyone know, or at least a post on the Indiegogo page, that the books have gone out, but it's super delayed. So those of you who are conscious and live in the United States or most places of the world, there's been a big supply chain issue. There's also a workforce issue. So it's compounded because there's fewer people working at Lightning Press, which is where the books are printed. And then, so that's delayed. And then the shipping industry is delayed on top of that. So that exponentially adds more time. So it's looking like 8 or 9, 10, maybe 10 weeks before the books go out. And I started sending them out a couple weeks ago. So hopefully, I don't know, first of next year, maybe. So apologies for that. It's kind of out of my control, but still, I wanted to let you all know that that's what's going on. So those of you who have ordered hard copies or have hard copies due to you from your perks as an Indiegogo supporter, just know that that's what is going on. So, and most of you are probably aware of that situation in the world as a whole. So, all right, enough of that. Continuing on. So this is another video in the series of the non-human cultures or races of Astagonia, which is, of course, in the SK Savage Kingdom's known world. That is the sort of European-esque continent. Astagonia, also kind of known as the Western continent. All right, so this video is about Thrimnor in particular. The realm's name is Thrimnor. Thrimnor is a Duergar realm, Duergar or Durgar. Either pronunciation is correct. It's an old Scandinavian word, comes from Old Norse. It literally means dwarves. And in the real world, in different parts of Scandinavia, it actually is pronounced slightly different. Duergar and Duragar. So either one technically is correct. I personally used to say Duergar all the time, and now for some reason I've gotten into the Duergar thing. I think because I like the dwarf, which you can see where the word dwarf came from, dwarves. So speaking of which, the Dorgar do not like to necessarily be called dwarves by the humans. Humans kind of lazily call them that, or they might associate them with the actual dwarf humans. So the dwarves take a little bit of offense to that. Some of them do, not all of them. Some realize how special we humans can kind of be and need a little hand holding. So they kind of let us slide on that. But generally they like to be called Duergar, as humans like to be called. If not human, whatever their tribe or nationality is. Aradornian, Mulovian, Lorinthian, Ismondian, whatever, Pridonian, that sort of thing. All right, so I will start on page 44 of the core rulebook, the core rulebook being this gorgeous sort of piece of art right there. Hopefully you own this. If you cannot, you can get it at Drive-Thru RPG. It's only, I think, $45. This kind of book nowadays printing is typically a $50 to $55, maybe sometimes $60 book. But this is only $45, so pretty affordable. Did that. I want people. It's a small game, honestly, so I want as many people to get it as possible. I don't make a lot of money doing this. It's definitely a tertiary profession for me, but it is nice to have make at least a little bit at it, or at least cover my expenses by doing this stuff. So anyway, so page 44 of said core rule book is right there. There's a picture of our Dorgar. Dorgar with a bodiless Dorgar with 2 hand axes beneath his severed neck, apparently. No. Obviously, that's probably not be the case. That could actually be the case if that's what you want. But anyway, that is our drawing of our Dorgar. Page 44 is where the racial stuff starts for Dorgar. I'm going to start with there, and then I'll end up going to the Gazetteer section, where I talk about Thrimnor itself. Because there are 2 Dorgar realms in Astagonia. Well, 2 big ones, and there's really kind of a third sort of colony. Thrimnor is the one we're doing because I'm going alphabetical order. I'm doing this time. Duragar will be the next one. Duragar, and then I'm not sure if I'll do a third one for Baldak. Baldrack. Wow, I can't even remember the colony. Anyway, it's another dwarven sort of colony or realm in the Golden Mountains of the Laurenthian Empire. I may not even do that one because it doesn't really show up on the map. It's pretty small. So just focus on Thrimnor and Duragar are the two Duergar realms, really, that we're going to talk about in Astagonia. So, all right, this is about Thrimnor. Enough about the rambling. But first of all, Duergar as a whole. On page 44 in the character creation chapter, this is the Dorgar section. And again, non-humans are optional in Savage Kingdoms. There are some couple GMs that I don't know personally that I've met just like through email correspondence and that sort of thing, that they strictly run it as they don't really allow any non-human player characters. And I kind of understand that. And that's why I left it as an optional. Because it is a sword and sorcery setting, which focuses a lot more on humans, and not only humans, but different human cultures, very colorful cultures, generally of an antiquated era, perhaps up into the Dark Ages. And this setting is really kind of Dark Ages, maybe early Middle Ages in certain areas of the world. And it's supposed to have a sword and sorcery feel. But without going too much detail and derailing this entire video, which I probably already have, but I'll continue on anyway because I don't edit these things. As this world and playing in it has developed, it's really gotten away somewhat from sword and sorcery and has become a cross between sword and sorcery and I hesitate to say high fantasy because I'm not a huge high fantasy fan unless it's used in the context of high fantasy as in Middle Earth. Middle Earth is actually kind of low high fantasy. Doesn't make any. That's why I don't like the terms that much. They don't really make a lot of sense. But originally, literary-wise, fantasy literature-wise, high fantasy meant elves and dwarves and other human races that were kind of acknowledged in the world, and not just fringe monsters and demons that were off in the world, kind of like sword and sorcery. So I think that's the main elevation. And magic might have been slightly more prominent, although it's not quite as prominent in Lord of the Rings as it is in a lot of modern high fantasy, which is the one that I don't like quite as much. I don't connect to quite as much. I like my fantasy to be a little bit more grounded. And so that's why non-humans are an optional race, which includes the Dorgar. So with that said, finally, let's go forward. So Dorgar. Sometimes called dwarves by humankind and not always to Duergar appreciation, this is a hardy and enduring race of short-statured but incredibly stocky people whose males grow impressive beards, often kept in intricate braids, or worn down to ankle level, usually braids. Duergar are precise craftsmen, or craftsfolk, I probably should have said, especially of metal and stone, and make extremely resilient warriors. Thrimnor and Duragar are the primary kingdom holds, as I had mentioned. And that's all it says at the beginning of the Duergar paragraph. I sort of pared down a lot of the race descriptions, especially if it's a race that's kind of already known, like the dwarves are already in like D&D and Pathfinder. And my Duergar are pretty similar. You'll see as I read through the special book. There's a couple little tweaks, but it's mostly, if you're thinking typical dwarves from Lord of the Rings, Dungeons and Dragons, even early, even Nordic mythology, you've got the right idea here. All right, allowable callings for Duergar. And again, this is whether you're Thrimnori or Duragar. There is a couple little tiny differences that pop up through the section, which I will point out when I get to it. So, all right. Allowable callings: alchemist, bard, berserker, craftsman, gladiator, healer, hunter, knight, merchant, noble, priest, sage, seer, soldier, thief, witch. So those are the allowable callings. And again, a calling is not as strict as a class, and like a lot of RPGs. But it's also not completely freeform, although you can still do that. Like in Heraldry, I designed the game to where you can not have a calling. You still build a character the way you want to. Calling just kind of dials you into a little bit more focus, and even game mechanically, you will save a few points here and there as you build the character. So yeah, so that's what a calling is. Attribute array. Duergar player characters must arrange their attributes of character creation using the following guidelines. So I will do like I did in past videos, where I go into what's the most favorable attribute. Vigor is the big attribute for Duergar. Vigor is kind of like Constitution, say in like D&D or Pathfinder. They can start with up to a +4 bonus and +4 in Vigor. They can only start with as low as a -1 in vigor, and their absolute maximum is +6. So they're so vigor is definitely kind of the main thing for Dorgar. They're known to be very, very sturdy, very stocky, very durable, and in general very healthy overall. So their second most favorable attribute is willpower. Willpower, they can start with as high as a +4, as low as they can only start with as low as a -2. Dorgar are very willful, and their maximum, absolute maximum is +6 through advancement. You can eventually attain that if you so choose. Special abilities of Duergar: Ancient Enemies. They gain the hated foe talent for free. This enemy must be one of the following: dragons, giants, or trolls. And that could be either Thrimnori or Uldaraki Dorgar, because each of those kingdoms sort of have a dealing with that. If I had to, Thrimnor is probably the most, would be favoring mostly dealing with dragons a little bit more, although those are super rare, so I hesitate to say that. Whereas in Uldarak, it's really a little bit more to deal with giants and trolls, but it's very minimal difference there. Craftsmaster, their second special ability, Craftmaster. Dorgar characters get a +1 bonus to crafting skill rolls with regards to working with metal or stone, as well as when appraising such for quality and value. So whenever they're working with metal or stone, another +1 bonus for crafting, and when they're appraising it, they get another +1 if it has to do with predominantly with stone or metal. Special ability number 3, or also known as a racial ability, Deep Sight. All Dorgar are born with the ability to see in complete darkness up to 20 yards, as if it were twilight. So, or I guess like in D&D, I think it's called dim lighting, but anyway, twilight. Earth and Fire Affinity. Dorgar gain a +1 bonus to magical arts, earth and fire skill rolls. Note that you must have either the magic affinity talent, or at least one skill level in a magical arts discipline before you can even attempt any magical arts skill tasks, which is per normal rules. That's just a little reminder. But if you are skilled in earth and fire, or have some access to it, you do get a +1 additional bonus to your skill rolls when dealing with that sort of magic. All right. Favored weaponry. Oh, and just to go back really quick, so that might be a slight different. A lot of RPGs take doors as to be very magic resistant because they don't deal with it that much. In SK, I chose the fact that they're not maybe as open with like flashy, like over the top magic, or like say like the She or like some elves would be kind of known to perhaps use, or other fae. But they do use magic in a more subtle way, particularly earth and fire, like it says, typically with their crafting, with crafting items, rune magic, that kind of stuff. So they don't deal a lot openly with what would be considered sorcery, which is kind of suspicious, usually very flashy magic. The term's very loose and subtle in Savage Kingdoms, by the way. But they will use what humans would call magic when they need to, when it best benefits their profession or their overall society. Favored weaponry: gain one of the following skill specialties, either from weaponry melee, which can be battle axe, great axe, hand axe, maul, or warhammer, or weaponry ranged, thrown, hammer, or hand axe. So you can choose just one of those. So you could choose throwing axes, and that would be in your ranged weaponry skill, especially at that. Or you could choose great axe, for example. That's your melee weaponry skill, or weaponry melee. Or you could choose maul or whatever. All right, next one is Hardiness. All Dorgar gain a +1 bonus to endurance rolls when resisting diseases and poisons. Furthermore, from Thrimnor, so this is another little tiny differential. Furthermore, from Thrimnor, this bonus also applies to resisting heat effects, or from Uldarak, the bonus instead applies to resisting cold effects. So that's one of those little tweaky little things you have to kind of remember if you write it down in your character sheet. You might want to denote that or put an asterisk next to it or something like that sort of thing. Rune Mage. Dorgar characters pay 2 points less for the rune magic talent, because it's very entrenched in their cultures, dwarves scribing runes into the things they make and infusing it with magical power, that sort of thing. Short Stride. So this is a ability, but it's a drawback. It's just in the ability section. Short stride. Dorgar suffer -2 to mobility as well as to acrobatics or athletic skill rolls involving jumping or leaping. And that's for a pretty obvious reason. Their stride's shorter and they're built very densely. So that's really good when you're resisting being knocked back or forced back by a creature. You have this low center of gravity, you're very stocky and sturdy. But when you're trying to do sort of acrobatics things or like keep up with a long-legged sprinter, it's a little bit of a flaw. So there you go. All right, favored talents for Duergar in general. They have a lot of battle ones. I won't list them all, but as you would imagine, they're kind of a warlike race. They don't often they're not very imperialistic. They don't spread out. I mean, they used kind of in the old days, but now Thrimnor is pretty much contained. It's not really expanding anywhere, at least under the current king, which is Glorin Ironbeard, I think is his name. I'll get more into him a little bit later. But they are still a war-type race. They're still a very proud warrior culture, mostly defense instead of offense these days. But anyway, some examples: armor acclamation, bashing blow, blade honing, these are battle talents. Draw the line, fell-handed, hold the breach, mighty ranged, shattering blow, shield bash, stuff like that. So blood talents that are favored: dragon kindred. That's the only one. Thrimnor has a history of being kind of savaged by dragons, but at the same time, because the dragons show their power in Thrimnor, with like early Thrimnori Dorgar, and we're going back about 500 years, in this case 600, maybe 700. There was a mighty dragon called Glorinderax, and he was kind of he laired in this part of the mountains, and once he found out about some of the Dorgar cities with gold and some of the gold mines he had found, and silver mines and iron mines, that sort of thing, Glorinderax, like many dragons, became very jealous. He must hold these things, and he would just he would raid the Thrimnori strongholds and that sort of thing. And there's a whole history thing there. But so in the process of the Dorgar, not only were very hostile and defensive against dragons, but many of them, because they saw the might of the dragons, actually secretly became very jealous of their power. And so there was these little draconic cults would kind of pop up in Thrimnor, and that's what the dragon kindred blood talent represents. It represents a Dorgar who either believes he has dragon blood in his, or he's just his kin have always historically been very close to serving dragons, or sort of almost worshiping them, or at least sort of imitating them to some degree. All right, favored mystical talents: battle mage, enchant permanent object, extended ritual, meditative trance, sacred oath. Dorgar are very oath driven, so that's definitely one of them. Favored social talents: apprentice, artisan, champion, merchant, militia, miner, mountaineer, porter, steady craftsman. Subterfuge favorite talent: only one, trap setter, because it has to do with building and engineering a little bit, so that's why they get that as a favorite talent. And again, I've said in other past videos, but just to remain consistent, favorite talent means that you pay 1 point less for it. So if it's a 3-point talent, you pay 2 if it's on your favored list in your race. And also, callings have favorite talents too. So if you say if there's a 3-pointer that your race reduces by 1, and also your calling reduces by 1, then you only pay 1 point for it. But you can never reduce the cost of a talent by less than 1, unless you get it free as a special, like a racial ability or an order or sect ability, and it literally will say that it's for free, that it's part of your thing. So it shouldn't be that confusing. All right, other talents: commanding voice, grit, heirloom, keen memory, time sense, valorous, and willful presence. Those are all very Dorgar. Favored weaknesses. Again, a favored weaknesses means you gain an extra point for it to spend towards talents or skills at character creation. So favorite talents for Dorgar: addiction to ale or mead, oathbound, obsession with gold or gems, phobia of the sea or open spaces, and rotund. Because if Dorgar don't remain if they're not at the forges every day or training with weapons, they tend, with that build of theirs, that physiology, they can get a little dumpy if they're not careful. The other ones are probably self-explanatory: addiction to ale and mead, and oathbound. They take oaths very seriously, and obsession with gold and gems, and the phobia of the sea is the whole typical dwarven thing that are really like water a whole lot. Not necessarily water in general, really the sea or like you know, underground rivers and stuff they're kind of used to, but or open spaces because they're used to tighter tunnels and caves. And even though they build these pretty large chambers that are typically much larger than dwarves, I mean, a lot of their chambers are bigger than what humans build. To make them kind of spacious, they still have a phobia of like really open spaces. Some of them can as a choice, is what I'm saying. Like big open plains might be kind of unusual to a Duergar. Sample names: Baldurin, Beldar, Durak, Frithly, Glorindur, Heltak, and Morandak are your male sample names. Again, there's 7, like in all the other entries for all the other races and cultures. Beldra, Dori, Drondi, Morda, Norga, Thrym, and Thorda are female Duergar sample names. Duergar surnames, which are always clan names, are colorful affairs such as Bloodaxe, Deephammer, Iron Fist, Stonebeard, etc. And that's, you know, this is not groundbreaking. That's fairly usual for a lot of dwarven type cultures and fantasy RPGs. So you might be Norga Deephammer, or Beldar Stonebeard, or something like that, or Heltak Bloodaxe. So, cultural item. You may choose one of the following items at character creation, or 2 by spending a luck point to complement the rest of your gear. Let's see. I guess I can read a few of them really quick. You can choose a battle axe, hand axe, or warhammer of exceptional quality, your choice of 1. A set of exceptional quality craftsman's tools gains you a +1 to either metal or stone-based crafting skill rolls, your choice of which. A harness of Duergar mail. So Duergar mail is kind of almost its own thing. It's kind of and I think I kind of took this from Tolkien. Like he made one little description about Gimli's like dwarf mail, and almost to the fact that it was a little thicker or something like that, less harder, more difficult to penetrate. He might have been describing a 5-ring process instead of a 4-ring chainmail making process. Those of you who know a little bit about armoring probably know what I mean. Or maybe it's even like somehow they managed to do a 6-ring or a double layer of mail. Maybe that's what it is. But anyway, I kind of have that as well. I call it Dorgar mail. Exceptional quality, armor rating 4, so it's basically 1 higher than more like human mail, chainmail, and -1 mobility penalty and -2 to skill penalty. These penalties are doubled if donned by non-Dorgar. So if a non-Dorgar puts it on, it doesn't fit right. It's super heavy. It's built specifically for Duergar physiology. Or you could choose a war helm of exceptional quality, +1 to armor rating when worn with body armor, but -1 to perception skill rolls. And that's a note in general about helmets. I think it says it in the equipment chapter, and I alluded it to there again. If you wear a helmet with nothing else, it doesn't give you any armor because it's very easy to swing around the helmet. A helmet really only works well when there's other armor to support it, particularly like shoulder pauldrons and that sort of thing. So that's why. And helmets do reduce your perception skill rolls by 1 as well, for obvious reasons, as it is covering your ears a good bit and partly blocking your eyes slightly as well. So, a runestone talisman. Wearer gains +1 to magical art, earth, and fire rolls when performing ritual spells. So that's kind of cool. A Duergar war pony as normal pony stats, but +1 to vigor and battle trained. So they're trained for battle and they're a little hardier. Or you could choose a drinking horn of Duergar stout ale. Any non-Duergar drinking at least 3 swigs of this stuff must succeed in a DL 10 endurance roll or become inebriated, mildly or lightly inebriated, for 10 minutes per point of failure. So if you're a non-Duergar, yeah, watch out. It'll get you. It's made from mushrooms that grow underground. They have a slight sort of psychedelic effect and that sort of thing. A semi-enchanted worm scale, or worm scale, as in dragon, possibly belonging to Glorinderax, who I talked about a little bit, Glorinderax of old, grants bearer +1 to endurance rolls to resist cold effects. Could be easily worth 20 plus 1d20 silver pieces. So if you were to try to sell it or trade it or something. But if you keep it, it's +1 to endurance rolls to resist cold. So that's actually probably more valuable to keep it. But, you know, it's up to what your character would do. So Glorinderax, by the way, is a combination of Duergar and dragon speech. So the axe thing, you hear a lot of dwarven names in Savage Kingdoms. That typically means mighty, which a lot of dragons like to take that name because they're very a little self-centered. Glorinderax. Glorin means ice in Duergar, in at least my Duergar language. Glorinderax. I think Dur is also Dwarven. I'm trying to remember what I made. What was Dur? I think it means Glorinderax. So basically, Glorinderax means mighty ice, or he of mighty ice, or mighty ice wing, or something like that. Or ice Dur might be tooth. Mighty ice tooth, or he of mighty ice and teeth, something like that. Right. We'll go with that. All right, moving on. So, general code of honor. Keep the secret lore of the deep to oneself when in the surface world. Honor the Dorgar king and the ancient sovereignty of his clan's lineage. Honor the ways of Duradin and Baldak above all other deities. So those are the two main Dorgar deities. Duradin is probably the in Thrimnor, he's probably the prominent chief god, Duradin. And he's a god, remember Duradin, god of craft and breathing life into the Dorgar, fire a little bit, that kind of thing, crafting. Baldak is the war god. He's more prominent in Uldarak. And he's like the Dorgar war and battle god, a god of champions and that sort of thing. Honor. All right, continuing on in the general code of honor. Honor and respect your clan, its members, and its ancient traditions. Punish serious insults by a formal duel or by acceptance of apology gifts. Lastly, craft no object or light no forge fire until at least half payment has been collected. So Dorgar, honorable, overall sort of nice people, but they don't play around when it comes to their profession, and I understand totally with them in real life. Get at least part of your money up front and don't do stuff for free unless it's like a passion project for like a really good friend. Sorry. That was a little side note, wasn't it? So, all right. So that's their general code of honor. Remember, code of honor is just a loose thing, or it could be a serious thing, depending if you want to play it that way. Kind of gives you a guide to how some insight, how the race or culture thinks and how their traditions and ideals line up and what's important to them, that sort of thing. All right, so that's the Dorgar section. I will now move on at 27 minutes. Not too bad. Move on to the Gazetteer Chapter, and I will look up Thrimnor, the Thrimnor entry. There we go. It's on page, I don't know, 330 something. Oh, I'm close. There's Uldarak is on 337. Thrimnor is on 335 of the Gazetteer section chapter of the Savage Kingdoms 3rd edition core rulebook. There's a map of Thrimnor right there. You can see Thrim's Deep is on there and Durtharon. So Durtharon, which is the colored dot there, the blackened in one, that is the capital, so-called capital, where King Glorin Icebeard, or is it Ironbeard, where his seat is. Thrim's Deep is also very important. And there's some other pretty important strongholds, but just not quite big enough to really kind of pop out on the main map. So that's really kind of the point there. In other words, they are settlements of less than 5,000 Dorgar. But Thrim's Deep has about, if I recall, 7,000 or 8,000 people, dwarves living there. And Durtharon has probably 9,000 to 10,000. I probably have these numbers somewhere in the chapter. Anyway, if I don't, just take that as semi-canon. All right, so Thrimnor is a Dorgar kingdom located in the Sanctuary Mountains, a south-running branch of the Greater Ice Claws, west of Mulovia and southeast of the She realm of Glorinderax. Like most Duergar holdings, Thrimnor is a somewhat mysterious and hidden place, although not to the degree of Uldarak, another dwarf realm far to the north and west. The Thrimnori actually trade, at least on occasion, with most of the neighboring lands, be they human or she or otherwise, even sharing a few of their smithing secrets from time to time, but only with those who can be trusted or can offer a more than worthy price. So that's just kind of the opening blurb right there. And then it gets into language. The native language of Thrimnor is Dorgar. I know that's a shocker. Naturally, a runic-looking language when written or etched. Some of the more scholarly or well-trained might also know Malovian, Scythian, or even Brithian, She, and Troll speak. Religion. All the ancient Duragar divinities are admired and homaged here, although Duradin, god of gold, iron, and metalcraft, seems to be even more popular than Baldak. I think I mentioned this earlier. The usual chief god, lord of battle and honor. Thrimna is the only known Duergar goddess, is also respected here as a deity of secrets and fire. So it's said that she's the one that kind of stole the secret of fire from either the fire giants or some other gods. It depends on the telling of the story. and then gave it to Duradin so he could use for his forges. Geography, let's see. The kingdom is, as you would think, it's mostly mountain peaks, crags, occasional valley, river, waterfall, or high plateau. The sanctuary mountains, the lower reaches of the mountains are often forested, especially in the southwest, and the mighty Iron River tumbles through the north and eastern borders. Right, major cities and settlements. Duergar is the so-called capital of Thrimnor, which I mentioned, a great fortress city, mostly underground, in the north-central reaches of the kingdom. The name of this great settlement is said to be taken from a Duergar realm across the Great Sea, across the Dragon Sea, which is true. So when you get the Savage East book, or if you've already gotten it, and you see a realm called Duergar over there, that's actually, so this city is in honor of that Dorgar realm across the sea in the east there, Duergar. All right, so let's see. Where did I leave all taken further across the sea? Thrim's Deep is a notable mine city named after the first recognized king of this realm. Yeah, his name was Thrym. That's what he gave the realm's name, Thrimnor. Named after the realm, Mordath and Hammer Keep are also fortresses or mining settlements of worthy mention. Mordath and Hammer Keep. So those are two others. So yeah, Thrimnor was named after King Thrym, the first sort of recognized dwarf king in this area, where that kind of united most of the clans together. And there was some squabbling, and they didn't all follow, that typical kind of thing. But for the most part, he united Thrimnor. And the ones who didn't want to join, didn't want to give tribute to him as the over chieftain, or the high chieftain, or the king, sort of moved on and started their own little clans, or maybe got killed in their travels. And some of them actually wound up going to Uldarak, which is actually a slightly younger, helping found Uldarak, I guess I should say. All right, so denizens, flora and fauna. Let's see, I can just skim over this really quick. Mushrooms of various sorts can be found in the many caverns of the regions, as well as the occasional medicinal herbs such as hemlock, black mountain root, and even white lotus. You can find black bears, brown bears here, elk, goats, rams, deer, mountain cougars or panthers. Trolls occasionally brave these peaks, the mortal enemies of most Dorgar, and in the not too distant past, Thrimnor had its problems with dragons, which I mentioned earlier, including the mighty and legendary Glorinderax. All right, food and drink. The Thrimnori Dorgar preferred dark, stout ales to drink, but also mead, medium ales, and a local favorite known as Hugdrath, which means in Dorgar hog's milk, Hugdrath, which is said to be brewed with pig's guts, honey, and various mushrooms and mountain herbs, and can cause quick and extreme intoxication in non-Dorgar. See the Dorgar racial entry, which is interesting because I think I meant to put that as a starting item, and I don't think. Oh no, I did. I read over that. That's right. Heavy meats, barely cooked or sometimes ladled with blood sauce or mushroom spice, or even hugdrath, are greatly encouraged, particularly boar, pork, and even bear or horse on occasion. Now that I'm using more of a Dorgar voice. Glorin Ironhammer, King and High Kingdom of Thrimnor. Oh, never mind. Glorin Ironhammer, King and High Chieftain of Thrimnor, who resides primarily in Duergar, is a notable character. Beldane Silverfist, a female Dorgar, is a renowned smith and priestess of Thrimna. Molderin Stoneaxe is a accomplished warrior knight and champion of King Glorin. Heldor Flamebeard is an esteemed high priest of Duradin. Heraldry and symbology. King Glorin Ironhammer's royal device is a black hammer on a silver-blue field, while the recognized heraldry of Thrimnor itself is like a united realm, is a golden eagle in flight on a black field. The emblazon of Clan Silverfist is, of course, a silver or white fist on a red field. The Stone Axe clan uses a great axe on black and blue counterchange field, and Clan Flamebeard utilizes heraldry featuring red flames over a black anvil on a golden field. There you go. I sound like a herald all of a sudden. Enemies and allies, just real quickly. Durgar clans of Thrimnor generally have allies with the humans of Scathia, at least mercantile-wise. Mulovia is an occasional ally in the past, mostly made through gifts of gold in exchange for silver, and even northern. So that means that the Dorgar would, the Mulovians are always craving silver. A lot of the nobles hoard it to make weapons against vampires and lycanthropes, which are kind of somewhat rampant in that realm. And then in exchange, the Dorgar get gold for it. So that's the main reason. Because I think some of my players have been like, why do the Dorgar really like the Mulovians? They're creepy with the death magic. It's like, they don't really care about that. They care the fact that they're getting gold at a really good exchange rate for silver. So that's really the connection there. As for enemies, Thrimnor must endure the occasional Mulovian betrayal or oath-breaking, as I just was hinting at that, as well as the occasional troll raid, hobgoblin invasion, or the uprising of a draconic spawn of Volnathrax, and therefore Glorinderax. So basically, Glorinderax is the ancient dragon from a long time ago. His spawn was Volnathrax, who some say still alive, but no one's seen him in about 20 years. 450, 500 years old. And then after Volnathrax, there have been some minor ice dragons that haven't really risen to too much prominence. I guess maybe Mithranax kind of rose to some prominence. So, all right. So primary imports: gold, copper, leather goods, herbs, spices, cattle, horses, ponies, amber, timber, wood goods, wheat, and barley. Primary exports: silver, gold, iron, tin, steel, herbs, precious gems, semi-precious gems, exotic stone, metal goods, and furs. Coinage and currency. The Kingdom of Thrimnor mints a silver coin called a Beldar, as well as a heavy octagonal gold piece known, that's probably their famous gold coin, is octagonal shape, known as Glorinac. It once pressed, why would we call it Glorinac if it Glorin means, oh, it's ice, not silver, sorry. I'm questioning my own writing, which I often do. It once pressed a copper coin too, but they've since fallen out of style, and foreign ones are often accepted anyway. Thrimnor merchants will take about any type of coinage so long as it's the quality of its base metal. Dorgar will barter for trade or services, but it is generally considered an insult to haggle with one. Oaths and pledges are important too, and sometimes can be used for purchase of goods and wares. All right, where am I at? 36 minutes. So I'll just skim through the rest. General climate and weather of Thrimnor is temperate to borderline subarctic, especially in the winter. The mountain heights provide cool springs and autumns, but quite frigid winters, etc., etc. However, the interiors of most peaks here are temperate and pleasant. Yet another reason dwarves prefer to build underground, or at least in part. Almost all the mountaintops counted in the Thrimnorian Thrimnorian realm are snow-capped. Most of them year-round. Spring thaws can cause the occasional flash flood downriver. All right. Common customs. There's a lot of these, and I like writing these, and because it's a really cool world building, at least for me anyway, and it might just be me, but I'll read a few of these. It is fairly common for a Dorgar out in the wild at large to say little for keeping secrets, especially smithing or mining secrets is a cultural more indeed. So in other words, when they're out in the greater world, they tend to typically be very, very quiet, and that's why Dorgar kind of get this stoic, kind of quiet, stoic sort of reputation, where amongst their own people, they're actually typically somewhat fairly boisterous. But they're usually not like silly or like over the top ridiculous. Let's see, what's another cool thing? It is rude to touch a Dorgar's beard without asking, and to have one's beard cut extremely short or gone altogether is an extreme insult to the Thrimnori's honor. Let's see, haggle. It can be offended by haggling. Some Duergar females can grow partial beards, which are usually just chin beards or long, sometimes braided sideburns, or like mutton chops. What's another? Many Thrimnorian Dorgar melt acquired treasures down, and in return, new things are reforged, so they like to repurpose stuff a lot. There are several deep trade secrets known by the Dorgar, things that even the most jaded of dwarves would not tell to outsiders. Duergar warrior keeps much of the spoils from battle, not only as a point of pride, but also not wanting various items and objects to go to waste. Thrimnori burn their dead on pyres, although some of their renowned dead are entombed in solid marble, granite, or even gemstone. There you go. I didn't read all of the customs, so that was about 2/3 of them. Common sayings, these are always kind of fun. Live hard and die fast. For Thrimnor and honor. May the shade you find be a dragon overhead. Why go over the mountain when one can go through it? The only trustworthy troll is a dead troll. There is sanctuary in the mountains. Gold breeds power, but duty breeds honor. There you go. I like those, actually. I say so. All right, I think, oh wait, last thing. Thrimnori calendar. So they do have their own calendar. It's at the top of page 336 here. So it's not really a calendaresque pictograph, but it's just kind of a writing, just some description of it. But anyway, it's still kind of cool. I like calendars, obviously. So ancient calendar, the ancient calendar used also by the Duergar of Olderax, so they use the same calendar and possibly other Duergar colonies across the Dragon Sea. This method of time tracking is based primarily on the Great Red Sun, the most reliable celestial body that the oft underground Dorgar would mostly see. Like many other calendars, every 360 days, warranting a full year, a complete trip through 3 seasons of 4 months each. So they basically have spring, summer, and winter. They don't really acknowledge an autumn or fall. To the Dorgar, autumn is simply the initial part of the winter moons, and the first moon of spring is simply the thawing, the transition between the dead of winter and the growing time of spring. Each year is recorded with its own name, a miniature eon unto itself, such as the year of the Golden Forge or the year of the Dragon Returned. So remember, each year earns a name. Every cycle of 44 years is considered a Balga, which usually equates to a typical Duergar generation. The typical Duergar month, which constitutes 5 6-day weeks, has days named Forge Day, War Day, Deep Day, Iron Day, Silver Day, and Gold Day. There is no dedicated Rest Day or Worship Day. Interesting. All right. There you go. 40 minutes. I think it's quite long enough. Hopefully you stayed with it to the end, my friends. And if you did, I thank you. If you didn't, well, you don't hear me saying this, so it doesn't matter what I say. So anyway, like, share, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Trying to grow this channel and trying to definitely grow the game. Pick it up if you can from RPG. Drive Through RPG, and possibly soon on Amazon if I can get that figured out. And also pick up the Savage East, a brand new expansion book, which I'm reaching for right here and waking up my cat who's sleeping next to me. That's it right there, quite lovely. And as always, I will talk to you guys again soon. And thanks so very much for supporting the game and this YouTube channel. Talk to you again soon.